You all have before you also in the brochure a short CV of Dr. Shenk, ordained minister of the Mennonite Church of the USA, a church that has a very prestigious record of dialogue and peace building all over the world. I know because I sent a priest to your place to study peace building. Mennonite Church in the USA. Also doctorate religious studies education. New York University. He has served within Muslim communities. I'm sure he will explain to us what that means. He has served within Muslim communities in Somalia, Kenya, and academic dean at International University in Lithuania. But quite a distance, far away from Somalia. And right now is adjunct professor at Lancaster campus of Eastern Mennonite University and global consultant to Eastern Mennonite missions. Special attention to Islam. Obviously, his church considers him an expert on our topic. An accomplished author. Oh, I know this book.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, you are the one. Yes, he wrote the book, A Muslim and Christian in Dialogue, which was with Badru Kanterenka. Yes, it was a wonderful book. So I liked it. It was, so here we are. We thank John Azuma for bringing this battery of highly qualified people to enlighten us and enrich us in these 3 days. Professor Shenk, Angula Faro.
Thank you. Thank you, Archbishop, and it's just a real joy and privilege to be with you. I noticed you were stumbling over my name a bit. Maybe we could just go with the Somali name for me, which is Dawood Sheikh. This Ghana football game. My wife was born in the U.S. I was born in East Africa. And when that game was going on, we were watching it. And my wife is not into sports, but this one she really got into. But alas, she was cheering for the American team. And I was cheering for the Ghana team. And jumping out of our chairs, and she's shaking her fist, yay USA, and I, yay Ghana. But the right team won.
I don't know about that.
Some of you have been asking about some of my books. I did bring a few along in the back there on the shelf. One is this dialogue with Kanterega. And then the other is a sequel, which is attempting to equip Christians for the conversation with Muslims, for bearing witness. So they're back there. Suggested contribution would be 5 US or 7 local. Just got word from Bishop Munier in Egypt that Al-Azhar has now agreed to publish this book in Arabic, and the Grand Mufti of Egypt is writing the forward, and Bishop Munier is writing the other forward. So I'm rather delighted about that, I would say. Back there off the press, so God knows. But we'll well, the theme is African Christian and Islamic mysticism, folk Islam. My wife Grace and I, with our 2 small daughters, arrived in Somalia in 1963. And within days of our arrival, I was introduced to the evening tea drinking institution for men. After the heat of the day was passed, the men would meet along the streets drinking tea. And those tea table conversations were my inauguration into Somali spirituality, which was significantly formed by Sufism. The Sufis are the mystics of Islam. Their quest is to experience God. The movement has roots in early Islamic history It was first developed, as we heard yesterday, in Baghdad 2 centuries after Muhammad's hijrah. It was a syncretistic movement, weaving together mystical inclinations within the Quran, as well as Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Gnostic, and Neoplatonic spirituality. Occasionally, the Sufi movement has had a bumpy ride in relationship to Islamic orthodoxy. In fact, at the beginning of the movement, Al-Hallaj, a Sufi saint, was crucified for claiming the possibility of becoming the incarnation of divine presence. The same tensions infected Somalia when in 1909 at Biole, a Sufi saint, Shenk, was martyred with 26 of his disciples. The Sufi tension with orthodoxy is rooted within a paradox within the Quran between an insistence that there can be no fellowship between God and humankind and the doctrine of friendship with God. Sufism is not a sideshow within Somali Islam. All Somalis were in some way formed by Sufi spirituality. I learned that the repeated references to Allah in conversations that permeated Somali life is related to a Quranic command to remember God. Ye who believe, let not your riches divert you from the remembrance of God. If any act thus, the loss is their own. This means that every area of life should be permeated with the remembrance of God, hence the repetition of God's name. Those tea table conversations gave me a hunch. If Sufism is a response to the yearning of Muslims to experience God, could it be that Jesus Christ is the fulfillment of that quest? As a young missionary in my 20s, I began to move in those directions as I sought to bear witness to the gospel as a fulfillment to the Sufi quest. My primary instructors were the Somali people. And as I listened to them, I learned that they need intercessors to help them in that quest to experience God. So they had occasional pilgrimages to the tombs of their intercessors. So on 2 occasions, I accompanied Somali friends on their annual pilgrimage to the tomb of the saint of their clan. In fact, each Somali clan had their own local saint. Clan identity was nurtured in an annual pilgrimage to the tomb of that saint. Each local saint was connected to the Prophet Muhammad and the founding saint of the order through a double chain of spiritual authority. The first link to spiritual authority for the Somali people was the chain which was the genealogical descent from the eponym of the Sufi order. The second link was the mystical chain, in which the hidden mysteries have been transmitted down through the generations, which have become incarnated within the local saint. So there were several Sufi orders in Somalia, as there are across Africa. The most pervasive order in Somalia was the Qadiriya, which was referred to yesterday likewise by Daniel, which was formed by Abdul Qadir al-Jilani in Baghdad. The 2 pilgrimages I partook of were within the Qadiriya system. So 2 streams of authority, the genealogical stream and the inner mystical stream, all commencing from the Prophet Muhammad himself, which the Sufi saint incarnated. I will recount one of those journeys, one of the pilgrimages, to a village of about 500 people, which was some distance from where we lived. A couple thousand pilgrims were in town. Some had traveled hundreds of miles to the Somali bush to participate in this annual homecoming event. The pilgrims walked together to the site of the tomb about a mile outside the village. At the tomb, people were repeating their dhikr of God by repeating Allah or other names for God. They were within the Tusba, the 99 names. They were also doing repetitive chants, repeating the names of Muhammad and Abdul Qadir and other saints as well. People were entering the tomb area, taking dust from the grave and sprinkling it upon their bodies. Others were writing prayers of petition on scraps of paper and tying them to the trees. Finally, the pilgrims began to trek back to the village, where animals were sacrificed. On the walk back to the village, I was told that pilgrims often shared accounts of blessing they had received through the intercessory powers of their saint. At nightfall, the feasting began, as well as dancing to rhythmic chants. A large wood fire provided light. My understanding is that the singing and dancing firelight continued well into the night. Reminds me of Professor Sana's description of the firelight experiences in voyager days growing up in the Gambia. As we commenced our journey home, I asked, is our pilgrimage to the Shenks too faithful to Islam? A friend chose his words carefully as he responded,